The House Education and Workforce Committee held a hearing on AI in the workplace this week, and lawmakers agreed on one thing above all else: America must lead.
When I think about this topic, I think about my 3-year-old daughter. Despite her frequent attempts to commandeer my phone, she doesn't yet know what AI is, but she will grow up in a world fundamentally shaped by it.
But thank you for being here. This is a key topic all over the world. And if we don't use it well, China will overtake us. And that's something we have to understand, regardless of workplace, individuals, performing rights, and all of the rest. We have to be the leader.
Exactly. Because if we don't lead, China will. And leadership means courage, vision, responsibility. Or according to this hearing, whatever makes quarterly earnings calls less awkward. See, the problem is that when Congress says leadership, what they really mean is speed. Not fairness, not safeguards, not asking inconvenient questions, just speed. And to be fair, this hearing took leadership very seriously. It led with business concerns. It stayed with business concerns. And it treated labor protections like an optional side quest. You can go collect all the Riddler's trophies in Arkham Asylum, or you can ignore them. It doesn't impact the game. It's just a little fan service for the nerds. Because nothing says leadership like rushing headfirst into the future, while politely explaining that anyone who gets hurt, well, they should understand, because
China will overtake us.
Exactly. We have to stay ahead. I mean, it's not like AI is being used to suppress workers' rights to organize.
But we must focus on genuine harms, not speculative fears. Many of the more extreme hypotheticals, like using AI to suppress union activity, remain almost entirely theoretical. As a former official at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in the Department of Labor, as well as in private practice, I've never seen employers use AI in a nefarious way. To the contrary, most are focused on using AI to improve efficiency and compliance. That's why a rapid rush to enact new laws is not the answer.
See? Bradford Kelly said so. And he's a smart guy. And Tim Walberg agrees.
A lot of the concerns that we hear about with artificial intelligence originate in academic literature. When we hear about all these problems about artificial intelligence, we're not seeing the cases. As somebody who does a lot of litigation, the reality is that when there's a big legal problem, you see cases generating on it. You're not seeing the cases come up. All these problems that you hear about with artificial intelligence really are speculative in many ways, and they can only be found in academic literature. But going back to the NLRB memo, it lacked clear definitions and standards, and it also failed to acknowledge how AI is actually being used in the workplace. The fact that employers are using it to prevent harassment, that they're using it to improve safety. It disregarded those and put them to the side. And also consider that the memo wasn't subject to notice and comment. There was no stakeholder feedback. There was no voice of employers. There was no vendor feedback. And those are the ones who were actually developing and using the technology.
Just a Halloween scare.
Yes, exactly.
Ooh, yeah.
Boo indeed. Because these guys would know. I mean, Kelly, he looks like a bug-eyed goblin, and Walberg looks like a zombified toad on meth. They know what's scary. They're terrifying to look at. And surely, these two esteemed gentlemen would not be openly lying. Oh, wait!
Substantial data and research show that concerns about AI are not hypothetical. Workers are already experiencing harms. Employers are using AI tools to collect data, determine wages, and hire workers. This includes the use of algorithms to set compensation for millions of workers, which can suppress their wages. This includes, as a Roosevelt report on nurses noted, that on the same day, at the same hour, in the same hospital, 2 different gig nurses can be paid different amounts by the same app. These tools often replicate and exacerbate systemic bias management systems. This technology allows employers to surveil workers in more exacting ways than a human boss ever could. 90% of U.S. employers in recent surveys reported using algorithmic management for their workers. These systems can control scheduling and task assignments, performance monitoring and evaluation, and disciplinary actions.
Well, that'd be embarrassing if they had souls. You see, the public record disagrees with Mr. Goblin and Mr. Meth Toad. In October of 2022, National Labor Relations Board General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo formally warned that electronic surveillance and automated management systems could interfere with workers' Section 7 rights under the National Labor Relations Act. Abruzzo said, quote, "It concerns me that employers could use these technologies to interfere with the exercise of Section 7 rights under the National Labor Relations Act by significantly impairing or negating employees' ability to engage in protected activity and to keep that activity confidential from their employer." She went on to say, "Thus, I plan to urge the board to the greatest extent possible to apply the Act to protect employees from intrusive or abusive electronic monitoring and automated management practices that would have a tendency to interfere with Section 7 rights." And unfortunately, that plea fell on deaf ears. Because as of January 28th of this year, the year of our Lord, the Flying Spaghetti Monster, 2026, Amazon has laid off 16,000 employees. Beth Galletti, Senior Vice President of People Experience and Technology at Amazon, described this as if she were taking a pizza order and telling us they ran out of pepperoni, saying, "While we're making these changes, we'll also continue hiring and investing in strategic areas and functions that are critical to our future." All of this on the heels of Amazon's workers organizing en masse nationwide. But yeah, corporations don't want to take all of our jobs. That's absurd. They only want some of them. These are the same people who claim that they want hyper-individualism, relying on the government and a social safety net makes you less independent. Well, apparently that logic doesn't apply to corporate dependency, because that's what they want. They want all of us to be dependent on the corporate infrastructure to maximize shareholder value. What makes this worse is that Tanya Goldman, the former senior counsel to the Secretary, U.S. Department of Labor, was at the hearing as well. A workers' rights expert. She was questioned once. In a hearing regarding the impact of implementing AI in the workforce on workers, the workers' rights expert was only asked one goddamn question.
I have over a decade of experience in senior positions within the federal government's worker protection agencies, including at the U.S. Department of Labor and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
This aversion to expertise needs to stop. I mean, this woman graduated from Harvard Law, and yet only one senator, Lucy McBath, could be bothered to toss her the time of day. She was the only one who even seemed to acknowledge Miss Goldman, because what Goldman had to say doesn't fit the narrative of corporate supremacy and control.
The American people are living through another industrial revolution, and Congress must do more to help Americans understand how they can make AI work for them, but not against them. The right to join a union and collectively bargain is a concrete way for workers to have a real voice in their workplace. At a time when Americans feel like they have less power over their daily lives, unions give people a real say over the decisions that are being made that directly impact them and their communities and their families. Mr. Goldman, can you briefly describe why unions are so uniquely positioned to help regulate, Ms. Goldman, to help regulate the use of AI and protect workers from being negatively impacted and possibly even losing their jobs?
Yeah, thank you so much, Congresswoman. I really appreciate your comments, and I agree that unions play such an important role in ensuring that workers have a collective voice in the workplace, and that it serves as a counterweight to, the imbalance of power in the workplace right now between workers and employers. And when workers have a voice and a seat at the table in the design and deployment of AI, as Mr. Walton said, their expertise can inform the technology, and also that enables the most effective interventions, which are won and implemented by unions through collective bargaining in how technologies are implemented in their workplace, including AI. In addition to the examples that you raised, News Guild journalists have won protections in the newsroom from the use of AI, and this benefits them, and it also benefits their employers. So we're not getting, and consumers, so false and bad reporting isn't getting out, right? CWA has done a lot of negotiating around the monitoring of call center workers, and this really helps those workers make sure that AI is used for feedback and to support their performance, but not used for excessive surveillance and discipline and evaluations.
Ignoring her was 100% intentional. Old Wally here is part of the rope-a-dope for what the GOP and the Trump regime are currently doing. Minneapolis, Chicago, ICE, all distractions. The threats are real, but that too is by design. Because if we're all trying to defend our First Amendment right, we won't pay attention while they strip away our labor protections. AI is a tool, and it can either become a savior for the working class or its damnation. And if we don't keep an eye on this, damnation it will be. Bradford Kelly waved away concerns that artificial intelligence is already being used to retaliate against workers who organize. No cases, he said, no evidence, nothing but abstractions and vibes. When workers asked for a seat at the table, he treated the phrase like a punchline. Well, the record has been filling up, slowly, methodically. The National Labor Relations Board warned us a long time ago. So when Kelly says no cases, what he really means is no cases he's willing to acknowledge without a court order or a subpoena. Those are not thought experiments. They are warnings, filings, and enforcement signals from the federal government and workers already living under these systems. So what is the Trump administration's AI action plan? Well, on paper, it's optimistic, glossy, and relentlessly upbeat. In a Department of Labor piece authored by Deputy Secretary Keith Sonderling, AI is framed as an opportunity problem, not a power problem. The risk, we are told, is not job loss, but the speed of change. The solution is agility, retraining, talent pipelines, innovation hubs, rapid feedback loops, industry partnerships. Workers appear throughout the document, but only as objects to be moved faster. In this future, workers don't get power, they get optimized. What is striking is not what the plan says, but what it never pauses to ask. Who decides how AI is deployed inside workplaces? Who governs systems that track keystrokes, monitor movement, score productivity, flag risk, or recommend discipline? Who gets veto power when an algorithm quietly replaces human judgment with metrics that no one on the shop floor can see or challenge? This is where Kelly's contempt makes the most sense. If AI is defined solely as a competitiveness tool, then worker participation looks like friction. If leadership is measured by speed, then deliberation becomes delay. If dominance is the goal, consent is optional. The administration's plan emphasizes aligning federal agencies and partnering with industry. It does not meaningfully address giving workers governance authority over systems that directly shape our pay, schedules, discipline, and ability to organize. The future seems more like something workers are expected to adapt to rather than help design. This is just serfdom with better branding. That puts the hearing in a different light. When Kelly asks what a seat at the table even means, his little sarcastic quip is not confusion. He is speaking from a policy position that has already decided that the table belongs to someone else. Workers, regulators, and public records point to a present where AI is already being used to surveil, score, suppress. The administration is planning for a future where workers must move faster to accommodate those ecosystems. The gap between those two realities is not theoretical, it is the conflict. Call it leadership if you want, it's not. Call it agility, call it dominance, but do not call it neutral. Leadership? When progress demands silence from the people it affects, That's not leadership. That's control. Eyes open, voices loud,